package here. So we'll check back, of course, with you if we've got a second round coming through, although be it smaller and lighter. Thank you very much. You know, President Barack Obama's approval rating among independents has fallen dramatically in months. And a year ago, a CNN poll showed 63% approved of the way he was handling his job and 32% disapproved. So late last month, only 43% approved, 57% disapproved. So I want to welcome back our independent voter panel from last week. Joe Gandleman is the editor-in-chief of the Moderate Voice blog, and he is joining us from San Diego tonight. Omar Ali is a historian and an independent voting analyst. He is in Washington. And Nicole Kurokawa is also an independent voting analyst in Washington tonight. Thank you very much. Good to see you guys again. So, listen, I'm going to ask you this, Joe. It is believed that independents really supported the president during then-candidate Obama and helped put him on top, one of the staunchest groups that were in his corner. So then what is behind this drop in the president's approval?
There's a whole bunch of factors. I think one of the key factors is that job numbers are so bad right now. I think that essentially at the beginning when Obama got into office, Obama and the Democrats decided they had three basic goals. One, they were willing to expend political capital, they wanted to enact health care reform, and they wanted to do it in the worst possible way. Well, two things happened. They used their political capital, and they did it in the worst possible way, and now they're trying to salvage it. I think that this whole spectacle of the bargaining back and forth, which people knew went on in politics anyway, the let's make a deal aspect that was really played up by the new media in particular, which shoved it into the mainstream old media. I think all these factors together brought the numbers down.
So, Nicole, then what is this significant? What does this all mean then if his poll numbers are dropping among independents? What does this show about the president?
Well, I mean, think about what brought the president to office in the first place. His message 18 months ago was he would reduce spending, he would bring transparency to government, he would bring accountability to government, and we haven't seen much of that actually take place. So 2009 was the year of being angry. 2010 is the year of voters at the polls. So I think we're going to see a lot of independents mobilized. We've seen a lot of them through the Tea Party, through other sources, get out and get active. Even Sarah Palin last week encouraged primary challengers to Republicans. So it's going to swing both ways, but I think we're going to see a lot more activism this year. And
Omar, here's the interesting thing. You would think, you know, the true definition of an independent would be someone who doesn't have any axe to grind against a Republican, right, or a Democrat, right? So it's a good gauge of where the president is doing among people who really don't have an agenda. Is that fair to say?
Well, no, I definitely think they have something against the Republicans as well.
I want Omar to answer that.
Independents definitely have an agenda, and that agenda is political reform. And to pick up on something about the anger, yes, anger, people are angry, and anger will come and go. But there's an underlying frustration that the American people are feeling, and that's a combination of being angry and not being able to do something about that anger because of the bipartisan structure of our electoral system. And if Americans want to move forward on legislation that's critical, whether it's the economy, whether it's healthcare, whether it's innovative education, and they keep coming up against this bipartisan gridlock and that paralysis that's created there, it's unbelievably frustrating, and the anger is going to be expressed in a number of ways. So as we were saying before, President Barack Obama came in as an outsider.
So then, Omar, what is the downside then? What is the downside for the administration that his numbers are doing this among independents?
Well, the downside is that in some ways he has to address that. In some ways, from the independents' perspective, this is an opportunity for President Barack Obama to find out more about what is it that independents are concerned about, which are issues of opening up the process. Just to say something very quickly as a historian, see, the parties, there's nothing in the Constitution about political parties, and yet these two parties have taken over government. It's a structural issue. That's what's at play right now. And so if President Obama wants to do something about picking up his numbers, especially among independents, he's got to find out more about what animates independents. Okay. And the bottom line for independents is opening up the process and dealing with the bipartisan and partisan nature of our electoral system.
This is my last question to all of you, and really a yes or no answer this morning. If you saw the current president and the former vice president sparring on two different shows this morning, does that help or hurt independents at all? Does it help you decide on anything? Does it change anything for you? Nicole.
Well, it keeps me an independent. It's more the same. I think we're going to see it with
Omar?
the healthcare summit as well.
I think that bickering is emblematic of a larger problem, again, which is a structural problem.
I agree. It's a structural problem. It's like you pretty much know what they're going to say before they say it at this point.
All right, Joe, Nicole, and Omar, thank you so much. Always good to see you. Hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
You know, it's almost